My brother Ben lives in a modest little house on a quiet country road just outside the small town of Powder Post, Maryland. I used to complain that it was so dark out there at night that when I drove down from Connecticut to visit him every year, I couldn't spot his house. So, having a weird sense of humor, one Christmas I bought him as a gag gift one of those novelty light-up restaurant signs that says pizza in red and green bulbs, with a glowing yellow slice beside the words. He laughed and put it up in his front window, facing out to the driveway, and left it there all through my visit. Then, of course, he packed it away somewhere, but each Christmas he would hang it back up in the window so I could spot the house more easily as I came down the road on my visit. It became a running joke. We were goofy like that, what can I tell you? 4 years ago, he did it again, and I smiled when I saw the pizza sign guiding me through the pitch dark into the driveway. The night after Christmas, he and I got a bit drunk watching movies in his living room and watching the snow pile up outside the window. 7 inches since sunset, with more to come, and the wind was blowing hard, and Powder Post found itself in the middle of an actual blizzard. Around 12, just before I went into the guest room to crash, Ben noticed something out the kitchen window that he thought was a little strange. His neighbors across the road and down a fair ways, the Burchesons, had never turned their inside lights on that night, though their exterior lights were on. Archer Burcheson was his partner in swimming pool sales in town, and Ben knew he and his wife very well. Ben had to use binoculars to make out through the driving snow that their cars were still in their driveway. He thought about calling over there, but it was just too late in the evening to bother them. I woke up around 4 from a dream about a tiny female wooden soldier tapping the tip of her bayonet again and again and again against the glass of the guest bedroom window. I got up and shuffled out to the hallway bathroom. I wanted to get another good glimpse of the storm, too, so I went through the kitchen and stood in the dark, staring out at the sliding glass door that led to the backyard. Visibility was still bad as the brutal wind kept sweeping the snow across the land. As I turned away, my bare right foot came to rest on some of that cold white powder. It had gotten inside the house, a kind of trail reaching about halfway into the living room. I figured Ben must have gone out there a few steps while I was sleeping, and then come back in. I slid the door open on its track to get that nice sense of clean, cold air. Sure enough, as usual, Ben had not locked it. He said he almost never did, since crime was almost non-existent out there, and it was just him living inside the house. I went back into the guest bedroom and lay down to sleep. I figured the next day would be all about shoveling out a bit so my brother could maybe get into the office in the afternoon sometime, and then maybe puttering around the house, eating Christmas cookies, and enjoying the post-storm sounds of water dripping and ice cracking out there in rural Maryland. But I guess the town name Powder Post may have already rung a few bells in your mind if you're a news watcher, so you might already know most of the rest of the story. The police eventually found the Burchesons dead in their house, and a half-mile down the road, an elderly man named Carter Walker was also lying dead in a pool of blood inside his home. These were the first murders in Powder Post in 70 years. Beth and Sidney Stork were arrested 2 miles away at 7:15 in the morning following their killing spree. Sidney was 20, and his sister, Beth, was 22. It's very rare that two minds should become so synchronized in their insanity, but that is what had slowly happened as they'd moved on foot from one town to another over the course of years, finally ending up encouraging each other's madness to the extreme in a long-abandoned bridge-keeper shack beside the Titan River. The bridge had been gone for 3 decades, but the shack had remained. And that was where they'd set out from, that night after Christmas, so high on a reality-altering street drug called Lagoon, that they each heard the sounds of the knives they'd used to repeatedly penetrate the flesh of their victims as wildly different phenomena. Beth Stork heard the wounds, more than 40 in all across 3 victims, as popping balloons. Sydney actually heard them as train whistles sounding every single time the blades went in and came out again. Lagoon is funny like that, I read. In all, they'd covered 3 miles down my brother's road as the winter storm intensified all around them. As they walked with the sole purpose of finding a suitable new home, they let the need for warmth dictate when they veered off the road and fought through the snow to whatever house was closest. It had just seemed easier to kill the occupants rather than talk to them. So Sydney had taken whatever knife was accessible from their kitchens and attacked. After the old man was killed at about 6 p.m., and then the much younger Burchesons another mile away, the Stork siblings rested for many hours, ingesting ever more Lagoon and falling asleep on the Burchesons' comfortable sofa. Then, still dissatisfied, it was back out into the night, headed further down Lilac Road. But they didn't make it very far because it was so cold and so hard to see. The answer seemed to arise for them as if by providence. There was a pizza place on the side of the road. Sydney could see the sign up ahead. They just needed to get there. Beth was slow to follow now. Her right foot was for some reason completely bare, and frostbite had set in. Hot, fresh pizza. That was just the ticket, Sydney had thought. The sign looked just like the one from the little place on the corner they used to walk to as kids. Minds completely addled. They were disappointed when the place didn't seem to be open. Beth tapped on a window again and again and again, and Sydney even stomped all the way around back through 9 inches of snow to see if maybe they could find a way in. They had plenty of money, after all. A couple of slices for them both, that was all they wanted. Sydney had opened the sliding glass door, but been further disappointed that nobody seemed to be around inside. Finally, they just left. Their travels through the storm lasted only another 20 minutes or so before exhaustion caused them to collapse in the snow near a quiet pond on the edge of a farm, where the siblings turned their faces to the sky and made snow angels, and then slept again, barely cheating a certain frozen death by just a couple of hours or so. As soon as Ben and I heard all the facts about that night, the sign I had bought for him was swiftly broken into a dozen pieces under his boots. He moved up near me in Hartford soon after.